Welcome back to Magical Curiosities and happy Christmas. We are making a Harry Potter Christmas tree today, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about my tree. I decided to make one that has repeating patterns across the tree instead of one that has like one of every ornament, just because I like the look of the rhythm of it. I wanted the ornaments on there to be like even recognizable to people who weren't super into Harry Potter. Something that even muggles would recognize. So I'll show you the things that I chose. First, the scarf, I think, is the most important element of the tree. It is 15 feet for the 4-foot tree. That gives enough to wrap it around the little owl at the top. The owl at the top is just a puppet from IKEA, and I definitely want to try something new next year, but that was good for now. 15 feet, and it's crocheted. If you know how to crochet, it's easy to do. It's just single crochet. It's 8 across, and then each color is 10 rows. So just 8 across and then 10 rows, and you keep going until you get 10 to 15 feet for a 4-foot tree. If you have a 6-foot tree or a 7-foot pencil tree, it should be about 30 feet, which is insanely long. If you want to make one and you don't know how to crochet yet, check out the Crochet Guru on YouTube. She's great. I still feel like it was hard for me to learn without having someone teach me in person. So a lot of people crochet. You can ask someone to teach you. Once you get a few rows down, you can do it. It just takes a lot of time. If you don't want to spend the time, you can always go to my Etsy shop and buy one for me. I am not a super fast crocheter, so if you do buy one from me, I'm working for about $5 or $6 an hour, but I really do enjoy it. So if you don't enjoy it, just go ahead on to my Etsy shop. It's in the comments. Let's start with the snitch. It's so beautiful and so iconic. I have seen people do the snitch before for Christmas ornaments and loved it. So I've tried many methods, one being the sparkly paper. I really feel like there needs to be some metal element to it, even though it's not super realistic with the ball. It's supposed to be Christmassy. I really like the metal element. So I like the tin foil and I like it to be posable. So here are my experiments with the metal. This was just tin foil, layers of tin foil over and over, and wrinkles very easily. This one over here is cardstock, and I really like the way that turned out. So I thought maybe something a little bit more heavy duty than that. So I tried this one, which is like a cereal box. Then over here, this is a cereal box. I doubled up, and it really looked terrible at that point. So don't double it up. It just looks bad. Then I tried some foam. The kids' foam, and it really just wrinkled up and just didn't look very good. So the winner was the cereal box one. You can get these golden balls from the dollar store. I love the ones from the dollar store because they're extra shiny, shinier than the ones you can get at the craft store. I would go for the larger 1.5-inch ones rather than the 1-inch ones. They're closer to the size of a snitch. You need a hole to go straight through to put the wire through. So get out a Versatool or some sort of wood burning tool and put the pointy tip on and poke a hole through it. Or you can use a drill, but I used a drill and it cracked, so I felt like this was better. Then get a large gauge wire, maybe the one from the floral section, about 14 gauge, and stick it through. Then put some hot glue on the ends, maybe a really big blob, and you can smooth it out by sticking your finger in some water. And that way your finger won't stick to it and you can shape it while it's still hot on the inside. Then grab a Deco Color paint pen. They're almost like a spray paint, but in a pen. It gets a really shiny finish. So I use that to color the hot glue. Grab your cereal box to make the wings. You can make your own template by doing something just straight edge, about 5 inches long, and then a little bit over an inch wide. You'll keep the sides pointed and the very middle part rounded. Then when you cut it out, keep them together so that they are sure to be symmetrical and even. And then you'll want to lay them out and mark the inside corner so that the wire won't be showing on different sides and it'll look symmetrical when you're done. So mark the inside corners. And then for the wings, for the silver wings, I use a tin foil tape that you can get from the hardware store. It can be kind of pricey to buy a whole roll of it, but if you are crafty and like to do things like this, then I think it's worth it. But you can totally just get heavyweight tin foil and use spray glue. Keep in mind this tape is extremely sticky, so when you're putting it down, just try to keep it flat without wrinkling it too much with your sticky fingers. So then you put the cardboard down onto the tape, making sure that those marked inside corners are very close to the end of the tape so that they don't overlap onto your ball. Then get the wire and put that inside corner right up to it and fold it over and try to keep the creases out. You won't be able to avoid creases completely, but when you do get a crease, just push it down really hard and it'll almost disappear. Repeat with the other side, making sure that your wire is really, really straight. You keep that wire right up next to the cardboard. Fold it over, get all those creases right out, push them right out. See there, you can see I have some wrinkles and just push them down so they almost disappear. Then we're going to cut off the excess tin foil. There might be some excess wire on the ends as well, and you'll just clip that off with your wire cutters, or if you've lost yours, you can use your extra set of nail clippers like I am. So then we're going to make our little feather bits on the wings. You just cut straight through, but keep your scissors wide and deep into them instead of snipping right close to the wire. That way it gives a little bit of cardboard and gives it a little bit more strength. There's about a couple millimeters, I don't know how much, but there's a little space there between the wire and the end of the cut so that there is some cardboard to hold it all together and give it strength. Then from the middle of the wing onto the edge, you want to clip each little bit so that it's square instead of angled. And that just gives it kind of a more defined look. At that point, I really liked it, but I felt like it was just not quite as feathery as I'd liked. So I snipped each one of them in the middle so that it was longer. And again, I did not snip right to the edge. I kept the scissors long so that there was still like a couple millimeters of cardboard to give it strength. You want them all to be connected by the cardboard and not just by the metal tape. Otherwise, they'll be very flimsy and very fragile. But I really like having the extra feather pieces. It looks much more like the real snitch. I had tried at one point cutting a gap in between each of them, and that was way too fragile and looked really sloppy. So this was the way I ended up with in the end, that I felt like was strong and beautiful. Then you just shape it. You can have the wings go back, but it kind of is hard to have it hang. It kind of hangs backwards when you do that, but it's still really pretty. Or you can have them go out almost like angel wings. That's my favorite way to do it because it hangs a little more straight and you just see more of it on the tree. When you're storing them, you can put them all together in one box, but don't put a lot of other things with it because strings can get caught into the wings. So you want to be careful with the way that you pack it. Now on to the lightning bolt or the scar or the lightning bolt scar. Start by sketching your design out on chipboard. This is like a nice kind of cardboard. It's the kind of board that they use for bookbinding. I do believe it is at most craft supply stores. Anywhere where they have bookbinding supplies, it would surely be there. And I've seen it at the paper store that we have nearby us. So chipboard is what it's called. So make your design and then trace it on all the other ones you want to do if you're going to be repeating and making multiples of them. And then I forgot to show this, but you want to make your hole now. You can make your hole with an awl, or if you don't have an awl, you can just use a small bit on your drill and drill a hole through it. This is so that you can have somewhere to hang your ornament through. So that same silver aluminum tape that I've been using for everything else, that is what I used to cover it at first. But you could totally just paint it if you want to, if you don't have this kind of tape. And then you take a lot of glue, Elmer's glue, and just douse it, just cover it completely on the sides too. Make sure you get the sides completely covered with the glue. a generous amount. And then you're going to take your glitter, and I think it's called glass glitter. It's Recollections. I got it at Michael's Arts and Crafts. And it looks old-fashioned. It also oxidizes and kind of changes color if it's left in the light a lot. But this one's kind of a goldy silver, kind of in between silver and gold. Just completely cover it so that and then push it down so that the glue is sure to hold all of it. And then usually it's covered so well you can just flip it over and do the other side right away. If there's any spots that you've missed, make sure they get covered. Here's what I wanted to show you about oxidizing with this kind of glitter. I think it's the sunlight, or I don't know, I guess the oxygen. It does make it turn color because I think it has some real silver or something in it. I kind of like the way it looks when it oxidizes, but if it's not something that you like, if you don't like that antique-y look, then choose a different glitter or go with a paint. Pretty much whatever your heart desires. This is an easy craft, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And now to make Hedwig. He's a lot easier than it seems like it might be to make an owl. You just want to get some tin foil to make your shape. So the body shape is kind of like a teardrop. So shape it into the shape of a teardrop with kind of a flat back and kind of a rounded chest. Then get a ball, and it's more like half a ball for the head. And then get another thing of tin foil and wrap around both of it, kind of to get the two of them together, and then push into the divots to keep the shape of it. To get it into a better shape, you'll want a little hammer or something like that. I'm using my ring mandrel because I couldn't find my little hammer, just to help shape it out because it's very hard to shape it out with just your fingers. Keep it together so that everything stays in place and keep it in shape. I just used the tin tape that I had, the tin foil tape that I already had. And then the fabric that you want is just like something flexible and stretchy so that you can stretch it around, but also kind of fuzzy and like a short hair to it. Get a triangle of it and kind of shape it around and see what shape you'll need for it. I'm just kind of draping it around and wrapping it around and then cutting around it to get a basic shape, and then I'll just cut off any extra if I have extra. And if I have too much, then, if I don't have enough, you can always just add a little bit, like a patch in, and just glue it really well. So start with the head and then down the back, then around the sides until you get to the seams, and just make sure you have a lot of glue in the seams and that the seams really glue together very well. See, there we go. Pull all three seams in together and push them down really well. You can use Fabri-Tac or hot glue. I used both, and the hot glue is less messy, but either one is fine. Then take a little tiny scrap, roll it into kind of a tube, and that's going to be the feet. It just looks like his feathery covered feet right there on the bottom. And we're going to have Hedwig looking to the side for this one. So to make his beak, I used some black duct tape into a triangle shape. Before, I also used like a piece of polymer clay that was just broken off from something my daughter had made. But just whatever little black triangle thing. Glue it on there. And then I used some watered down paint to kind of give that sort of shading he has around his beak and neck. Watered down black paint, and then painted his wings, just little dots around his wing marks. You might want to look up a picture of Hedwig so that you can see what his dot marks look like, but it's mostly just sort of line type dots around his wings and just a few on his back. I also tried doing this with fabric marker, and I feel like the fabric marker was a lot softer. It didn't leave kind of the hard touch onto the owl. Not that this is really like a stuffed animal or anything. It doesn't matter too much if it's hard, but I did end up liking the fabric marker a little bit better. And I kind of look at like a little bit of an eyeliner, look around the eye, because that's what Hedwig has. And speaking of eyes, you might want to start this at the beginning, but get your little tiny cabochons, or you can do this on beads if you like. But little tiny cabochons, and then paint little black dots on the back side of them, and then paint yellow on top of that after the black has dried completely. It's really hard to hold these tiny eyes still, so you might want to get needle nose pliers and hold them while you paint. Then glue them on with hot glue. Don't use Fabri-Tac. I did that the first time, and the Fabri-Tac will make the paint dissolve and get wet again and smear the eye and look really crazy. So go ahead and do it with hot glue. Then go ahead and take a threaded eye like the kind that you find at the hardware store. Just stick it right into his head and screw it in, and you have something to put your thread on to hang it from your tree. And there's your Hedwig. No Harry Potter Christmas tree would be complete without the Deathly Hallows. So I did it with a wire wrapping method. I got a 14 gauge wire, and you can see that the $13 for the silver wire from Hobby Lobby is way more than when you go to Michael's and get the one from the floral section. Is like $6 for twice as much. So I start by pulling out the end of the wire, and I haven't clipped any off of it yet, but I'm going to curl the very end of it so that it has a loop. You want to turn that loop back on itself so that it's centered like a lollipop, not like a 6 or a 9. And then keep your wire really straight as you're working. Then we're going to measure 4 inches of wire, not counting the loop. So start from the very bottom of the loop and then mark your 4 inches so you know where to bend it. And then you can wipe this off later. Using your straight nose or needle nose pliers, you make your bend. It's okay if it's not exactly the right angle yet. It'll work out in the end. Measure 4 inches again and bend it again. Then once again, measure 4 inches and then bend it. You want to cut off the end and make another loop, just like the one on the other side. I ended up cutting off too much because it's better to cut off too much than too little, because I wasn't sure how much I needed for that loop. So you can do your loop, see how much you need to cut off, and then adjust. So then put those together with the round nose plier and straighten out your triangle so everything looks about right. So we made the triangle, which is the invisibility cloak. Now we've got to make the wand and the stone part, the line and the circle. So do another one of those head pin type look things with the round nose pliers. Hold them together with the round nose pliers at the top, and then mark where you need to bend it at the end. You want it to bend on the inside of the triangle. Then once you have them all together, you can just start making the circle. Just kind of wing it and it'll adjust more later. So it might not be a perfect circle at first, but once you get it in the triangle, it'll adjust and it'll look a lot better once everything's all put together. So get the general idea of it, hold it with those round nose pliers so everything holds right in place, and then clip your wire at the end. At this point, you're going to get a smaller gauge wire and wrap around the tops, the bottom, and the sides just to keep everything right in place and looking good. If you have a very, very skinny wire, you're going to have more wraps than if you have a medium wire. I decided to go with a medium one this time. You want to use your pliers to pull. If you just use your hands, it will not be tight enough. It'll be loosey-goosey. So hold with one plier and pull with the other plier to make the wire wraps nice and tight. Doing on the bottom is probably the very trickiest part, just because there's that end of the big wire there that needs to be wrapped around, and it might keep slipping out if you're not careful. So you might want to hold the end of the large wire, that the end of the circle that is, with pliers. I'm just doing it with my thumb here, but it did slip out a couple times for me. But keep it nice and tight while also keeping everything right in place. And if you're using a medium gauge wire for this, you'll probably want to keep the wire wrap very tidy and very like just line after line. If you're doing a smaller gauge wire, you can be more overlapping with things. So you just do the same thing on the sides of the circle as well, making sure the ends of the wires are just clipped in real tight, and that's how you do the Deathly Hallows. Put a string at the top and you are done. I hope there was something in this tutorial that helped you with your own tree. I did about 5 of each on this tree, except for the Hedwigs, which are larger, so I did 3 Hedwigs on my tree. I just put presents that were wrapped in owl post style wrapping around the tree and a train around the tree, which this is just a $10 cheap train that I found at Walmart this year. And I will be redoing this train to look like the Hogwarts Express. And that should be in a video in a few days. If you'd like to see my process of making it into the Hogwarts Express, then I will add it to the end screen in this video. If it's not up there yet, I haven't made it yet, but as soon as it's made, I'll put it to end screen so that you can just click through to watch the tutorial on the Hogwarts Express. Thank you for watching. Happy Christmas.